Thank you so much. Thank you to Brand Innovators for hosting this wonderful day. This looks like a fantastic agenda. Of course, thank you to Mastercard for hosting. And finally, thank you to Linda Bethea for joining me on stage this morning and speaking about innovation, which these days I think seems to mean AI and emerging technologies and what that looks like at Danone. And so thank you so much for joining.
Thanks for having me. I love to participate in my favorite Brand Innovators events.
So maybe we could just start a little bit about backgrounds. So for me, this topic is near and dear to my heart because I've spent my entire career building platforms at the intersection of emerging technology and advertising and marketing. First, DoubleClick, which many of you know is today Google, AppNexus, and Xandr, which is today Microsoft. And now with Firsthand and AI. Linda, how did you get to become the CMO of one of the most powerful brands, food companies in the world?
Great question. So I have a deep passion for food and beverage. Those that know me know I talk about food. I eat a lot of food. Food is my life. And I also have a huge interest in consumer behavior and what makes people tick. And so going into food and beverage marketing was a natural fit for me. I started my career at PepsiCo after getting my MBA at the Kellogg School of Northwestern and spent over 10 years working across various food and beverage brands at Frito-Lay and at Pepsi Beverages, as well as with our joint venture with Unilever on the iced tea portfolio. From there, moved over to what I call the fun side of beverages at Diageo, where I managed the rum portfolio for North America. Had a fantastic 3 years, but my body couldn't take it anymore, so looked to make a switch and moved over to Danone 5 years ago. And it's been a fantastic move for me, both personally and professionally. Danone is one of the largest B corporations in the world, which means that we truly believe in using business as a force for good, and that comes through in everything we do. Our stated mission is to deliver health through food to as many people as possible, and it feels really good waking up every day and thinking about how we make the world a healthier and better place. As I reach a certain, point in my life, having that type of purpose to rally around really feels good, and hopefully we have a lasting impact on the world. Somebody, former CEO of Greenpeace, actually, once said that there are few companies in this world that would make the world a better place if they doubled in size, but Danone is one of them. And so that really makes me excited to go to work every day on our fantastic portfolio of brands.
Amazing and very inspiring. Before maybe we just dive deep in and talk about AI, maybe a question for you. I mean, how does that mission of making the world a better place connect to the spirit of innovation broadly at Danone?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I mean, I think we try to cultivate a culture of innovation because we can't do this alone, right? If you look at our current portfolio, it is healthier than a lot of other food and beverage companies, but it's not where it needs to be. If you look at our manufacturing footprint, that's not where it needs to be. We actually had a 4-hour meeting yesterday talking about how do we reduce carbon and emissions and increase our sustainability efforts to make the planet a healthier planet. And that requires innovation. And that requires not just the innovative minds at Danone, but partnerships across the industry as well. New technologies, right? We'll talk about AI and others. That's going to be, a very much an industry effort to achieve some of those objectives.
Amazing. So when you think about innovation in the marketing arena, is it AI these days? I mean, it seems like they're synonymous in so many respects, but is your innovation strategy, would you say, focused and centered very much around AI and incorporating AI into the way you think about marketing or do marketing?
I would say we're very bullish on AI. It's not the only piece of technology we're interested in, but we did announce earlier this year a Danone partnership with Microsoft, specifically focused on how we can leverage AI to transform our business. And in fact, the entire North American executive team, all 16 of us, spent a week at Microsoft headquarters in Seattle, learning about AI and discussing how we think it can transform our business and where we want to start to leverage the technology. Our first area of focus was really on productivity and efficiency. So every member of the North American executive team is now an expert user in Microsoft Copilot. Anyone here using that? Yes, fantastic way to drive productivity and efficiency. I use it to summarize meetings that I miss, PowerPoint decks that are over 100 pages that I don't want to read at 9 o'clock at night, bring urgent emails from my boss to the top of my inbox. So we are all now super users of that to increase efficiency and productivity. But from a marketing standpoint, we're really looking at AI as a tool, not a replacement for marketing. And so our in-house creative and design teams really use it as, a partner on their creative journey and a tool that can help unlock their creative superpowers. A few examples of how we're using it for marketing would be using Copilot to help brainstorm marketing copy. It's not writing the copy for us, but it is providing some inspiration. We use Midjourney to create mood boards when we're doing packaging redesigns. We're using AI to create storyboards. That's been a huge help for us in the creative development process, cuts out weeks and weeks of from our timeline that enables us to get to market faster. So there's lots of ways that we're using it behind the scenes. We've yet to start to think about how we would use it for consumer-facing work.
Can you tell the difference between work that's generated by AI and work that's generated by humans, or does it sort of pass the Turing test, so to speak?
No, AI is not there yet, in my opinion. I know Coke just launched their big AI ad with lots of interesting commentary on the internet. We actually just had our QBR with our media agency earlier this week, and they had AI produce their entire PowerPoint presentation, and there was something wrong with every single image. Either it was the wrong logo for one of our brands, there was an extra digit on the hand holding the bottle of Evian water. So yeah, it is not there yet, in my opinion.
Okay.
Although I will say it's not just the technology, it's the person using the technology. And so you also have to train people on the right way to prompt AI to get the results you want. It will not replace humans.
So we should not expect to see, like Coke, Danone, AI fully generated ads over the next year, let's say, for example.
No, you heard it here first, folks. You will not see that.
So, how do you think about the risks? How do you think about the risks? You talked about some of the benefits and the upsides that come along with adopting AI into your workflow, as you mentioned. But where are the risks?
I think the biggest risk that we think about is from an IP standpoint, right? The AI works by continuously learning from the information that is inputted. And so if you're using public access platforms and you're saying, hey, can you come up with a new product for Stoke cold brew coffee, or help me think through a new design for Activia yogurt packaging, that then becomes part of the public domain. And you're going to maybe see some competitors launching similar things or launching similar designs. So we're really focused in partnering with our legal team on using proprietary tools, either through our partnership with Microsoft or developing some of our own tools to make sure that we're protecting that intellectual property. And I think the other risk for those that aren't is it may result in a sea of sameness. You'll start to see a lot of things look really similar because they're all leveraging the same learning models.
Right, exactly. So you talked about AI as a workflow tool. What about AI as a communications medium? That's what we're focused on. And the fascinating thing about AI, of course, is it's a powerful technology. There's not similar, in my view, to the internet itself. There's not one use case. There are many use cases. The one we're focused on at firsthand is how does AI change the way consumer and brands communicate with one another? How does it change the way they build relationships? How do you see that playing out with CPG companies over time?
So I know for us at Danone, we're exploring the use of that through our consumer connections team. So that falls under my remit. That's the team responsible for all of our inbound communications with consumers, whether they call the 1-800 number on the back of our packaging, reach out to us on social media. And we have an entire team of agents that's staffing those channels through regular business hours, but we all know the internet's 24/7. And so we're looking at how do we leverage chatbot technology to make sure that we're providing that continuous fantastic experience with our brands, regardless of when or where people are reaching out to us. So that's something I would expect to see from us probably later in 2025.
Very cool. And then what about marketing measurement? You've talked publicly about this philosophy of measure what you treasure. How could or should AI transform marketing measurement at Danone? How do you see that playing out?
Yes, we have a huge philosophy around measure what you treasure. I've told the guy on my team who coined that he needs to trademark the phrase. But we're actually partnering with Kantar and leveraging a lot of their AI tools to measure creative effectiveness. So they have a fantastic tool called Kantar Link, which is AI powered and enables us to test any piece of creative before we put it out into the world. And again, back to the efficiency and the productivity, it has shaved weeks off of our creative development timelines, and it's really accurate. They have a really deep database that they leverage for this, and I found the results. We've been using it now, I think, for a year and a half to be extremely accurate in predicting both the short and long-term success of our creative.
Very interesting. I have a few more questions here, and then I'm also, by the way, going to open it up to the audience. So if you have questions that you'd like to ask Linda, hang tight and you'll have an opportunity. Linda, you've also articulated this idea of a test and learn culture at Danone. Actually, I don't know if that's your personal philosophy or if that's more of a Danone philosophy. But my question is, how do you think about experimentation with new technologies as opposed to wholesale adoption? Where do you how much time and energy in your organization goes toward experimenting, trying new things that may or may not succeed?
I think one of the most exciting and challenging parts of being a marketer is how fastly moving the landscape is changing, right? I mean, you think about AI, that didn't exist when I started my career. Social media didn't exist when I started my career. Yes, I'm very old. And so as a marketer, you have to be constantly testing and learning because there's a new technology appearing every day, and it may or may not work for your brand and business. So we very much embrace a test and learn culture. For example, in our media team alone last year, we conducted over 50 different pilots. Only a handful of those worked and are going to scale up in 2025, but it's that constant testing and learning and building that culture of testing and learning that really enables us to accelerate what we're doing and leverage new tools in the right way to drive business growth.
Wow, that's amazing. 50 pilots. That's a pilot a week. I mean, that's...
My team is amazing.
Yes, wow. But that must be very inspiring to them as well to see... my experience is people want to work close to innovation. Mm-hmm. They want to work in an environment where that's encouraged. It clearly sounds like that's what you're building.
Yeah, it's what we're building, but it's also important with that you also build in a culture of failure. Failure is okay, particularly when you're trying to embrace new technologies. Again, they're not all going to work. Most of them will not, or they may not work specifically for your business. And so you also have to celebrate the failures because it doesn't mean you failed. It means you learned something and avoided risk because you tested it versus rolling it out at scale.
Super interesting and easier said than done. You hear a lot of people talk about celebrating failure, but it's not always done in corporate environments.
We have a wall of shame we put up. We have a wall of fame and a wall of shame, and they are equally important because, again, it fosters that culture of continuous learning. It's not a failure, right? Yes, you may be ashamed that whatever you tested bombed spectacularly, but we put that up at a town hall and we highlight that and we celebrate that.
Wow, that is fascinating. So clearly one of the important things that you need to do as a CMO is stay on top of what's new and what's happening in the world of emerging technologies and AI and so forth. How do you do that?
Brand innovators, obviously. Brandon did not pay me to say that. But honestly, I do really try to stay involved in key industry organizations. I have a fantastic group of fellow CMOs. We call ourselves the Boss Babes, and we meet regularly to share best practices and ideas. They're women I've met through this fantastic community. And then again, it's about fostering that culture of continuous learning and innovation within the team. We do quarterly culture treks that anyone on our team can come up with an idea for a culture trek, can we go out into the market? It may be, a market tour in the beauty industry to see what we can learn from what's happening in that space. It may be going to a new art installation. It may be going to a food hall. There are so many places you can get inspiration and learn about what's happening out in the world rather than just staying in the confines of your own office.
And I mean, you watch consumers so closely and so carefully, obviously. And one thing that I'm sure that's interesting about your products in particular as well is everybody buys them.
Hopefully everyone.
If they're alive, they were probably buying them. What are you seeing? How is the consumer changing? And what's most striking or most notable from your perspective in terms of what consumers are showing us today versus, say, 5 years ago?
Yeah, I think what's fantastic for us in the health and wellness space has been the continued increased interest in what people are putting in their body. People are reading labels more than ever before. They're, combing the internet for information. On TikTok alone, there were 9 billion searches for gut health last year. That is insane. And so as the maker of one of the leading gut health yogurts, that's something we pay very close attention to. Another thing that's been really interesting to us is the rise of GLP-1 usage in the US. That will fundamentally change the food landscape and what people put in their bodies. And so we're staying very close to that and thinking about how do we reshape our portfolio to provide that support to people on their GLP-1 journey.
And what about the way that consumers are consuming media and engaging with your brand via various touch points?
Yeah, that's another one that keeps us on our toes because it's continuously changing. We just had a meeting yesterday about what happens if the TikTok ban goes through in January. What does that mean for all of the media plans we've already built for 2025? So it's something where you have to continuously be staying on top of things, being ready to pivot, having that agility to make sure that you're staying on top of how people are consuming media.
That's great. I would love to open it up to the audience as well if people have questions. If you do, please raise your hand. Yes.
When you mentioned 50 tests, which is impressive.
Or insane, depending on how you look at it. Yeah, I think it goes back to we measure what we treasure. And so it depends on the objective of the test. But everything we do does have a measurable KPI that we're closely monitoring to determine whether or not the test is successful and we want to scale it going forward. It varies. So yeah, we could be looking at, is it increasing productivity? Is it increasing marketing effectiveness and ROI? Is it driving more targeted reach? It really depends. I think a lot's going to impact agency relationships, not just AI. Obviously, big news this week in the agency world. For us, I would say less so. We have an in-house design and creative team that partners very closely with agencies. So it's always been a bit of a hybrid model for us. I do think with the rise of AI and the ability for people to leverage AI to do more of that upfront creative brainstorming, ideation, storyboard development, et cetera, may change the relationship with agencies or the level of services needed from agencies. But for us in particular, they will always play a key role in helping us develop the content that we're putting in front of consumers.
Good question. How do you see AI changing the nature of the marketer's job itself?
Yeah, I think it absolutely will. Back to kind of the earlier point, AI is a tool, and it is incumbent upon the marketer to use that tool well. And so we need to train marketers differently on how they can leverage AI in the most effective way to achieve their measurable objectives. And so that will require skills training for sure. We have an entire team at Danone called Brand Academy that continuously looks every year what are the capability gaps among our teams and how do we develop the right training program to make sure we're developing best-in-class marketers. And that will absolutely include training next year on how to prompt AI correctly and effectively.
Do you find, do you hire college graduates, people who are new to the workforce as well? Do they come with more AI expertise than people who exist already in the workforce, or do you find that it's new to everybody because it is so new?
The generation gap is real. Again, our entire leadership team spent the time at Microsoft headquarters earlier this year, and it was fascinating watching some people try to figure out Copilot. Again, senior leadership team, most of us are a little older, more advanced in our careers, versus I have a 15-year-old daughter who uses AI every day for her schoolwork. So by the time she's, graduating college and ready to enter the workforce, it's a whole different animal.
Amazing. I would love to, if there are other questions, raise your hand, but maybe I can build off that for a moment. You mentioned your daughter. I know one of the things you and I discovered as a common passion is the role of parenting for working professionals and how companies support parents. It's something that I've experienced firsthand as a parent myself, and something I've sought to really build into the cultures of the company that I've built as well. But can you talk to us a little bit about your journey on this one and your perspective?
Absolutely. So my personal passion is to normalize parenting in the workplace. The majority of workers are either parents or caregivers, caring for aging parents, caring for pets, etc. And so I grew up in my career in a culture where that wasn't normalized. And if you had to leave to pick up a sick kid from school, you were kind of scurrying out and hoping nobody saw you. And so I'm very vocal about my role as a single mom to a 15-year-old girl. Most of the people on my team have met her in person. She joins calls either virtually when I'm driving her to sports practices. She comes to the office occasionally. And I set very clear boundaries. I drive her to school and pick her up from school every single day that I'm not traveling. And people look at me and are like, how do you do that? I just do. I make that a priority. My team knows it's a priority. I block that time in my calendar. Granted, I'm in a position of privilege where I can do that. But again, it's my mission to then make that okay for others on my team. And it may look different for them. They may not want to do pick up and drop off. They may have a different priority as it relates to caregiving or parenting. But we talk about that, and we talk about what's important to each of the members of my team and what they need from me and from Danone to make it work. And what I've found is when you do that and you give them that flexibility and that autonomy, they are more engaged. They are more willing to go the extra mile for the company. And so I think it's a win-win. You have, healthier well-being and more engaged employees that are going to deliver better business results.
I love that philosophy. I 100% agree with you. It's been my experience as well that is how you end up with the most productive, most focused, most motivated employees. So kudos to you and to the company for taking that approach. Let me turn it again to the audience. Any additional questions that people would like to ask? Yes.
Yeah, it's a great question, right? Because it is constantly changing, and that is very challenging. I think, though, what hasn't changed is the fundamental principles of marketing. And so it's really important that people are still being trained in those fundamental principles and how to build distinct brands that provide utility, both functional and emotional, to consumers. Those brand building basics are absolutely key, regardless of the media channels you're communicating through, the type of content, whether it's through big agencies or UCG, whatnot. It's really the fundamentals of how do you build a brand with a really strong brand purpose, a really clear brand positioning, and really distinct brand assets.
Other questions? Where does that training typically happen, do you find, in the world today? Does it happen inside the Pepsis and the Danones of the world, or does it happen in school? Is it up to the individual really to pick it up pick it up themselves and do so by attending conferences like this and listening to podcasts and so on and so forth? You talked about the educational institute that you have at Danone. But yeah, where do you become a subject matter expert?
I've been very fortunate to work for big companies that have fantastic in-house training programs. PepsiCo has the PepsiCo way of marketing. Diageo has the Diageo way of brand building. Every one of those companies has had their own unique spin on those fundamentals, but the fundamentals don't change. And so if you aren't working for a company that has those robust training programs. There are a ton of books you can read. I would encourage you to attend things like this, seek out mentors that you can talk to about the fundamentals of brand building, and become that subject matter expert. Because I do think those with those true fundamental skills are the ones that will be able to respond with agility to the ever-evolving marketing landscape. That's a fantastic question, because most people don't think about the impact and the imprint that AI has on the planet, essentially, right? I mean, think about all of that knowledge that's now sitting on servers and running through the wires. That takes a huge toll. And so there does need to be an offset there, but we have to think about what can that also empower that can reduce footprint in other areas. So it's a holistic picture versus looking at things in silos, but it's absolutely a consideration, and the one that we talk about every day. I mean, our head of IT was along with us at Microsoft, and then spent the following week down in Silicon Valley meeting with companies talking about that very topic. So we don't have an answer yet, but it's very top of mind.
Great question. Maybe one last question from my side. You talked about the 50 pilots last year. If you could wave a magic wand, somebody shows up this year with a new pilot that no one has proposed in the past. What problems are not being solved or addressed that people should be coming and addressing and targeting, but they're not?
Oh, I love that question. I would say 2 pain points that we're dealing with right now. One is on measurement, back to measure what you treasure. Traditional marketing mix models are severely outdated. They are measuring less than 50% of our marketing spend because they're still anchored in traditional channels. They're not capturing all of the retail media shifts we've made. They're not capturing all of social. So if any marketing mix vendors are out there, please hear my plea. We need more holistic mix modeling. Thank you. The other piece is around DEI. We've made very public commitments to invest a certain percent of our media spend with diverse owned publishers and platforms, and it's really hard to drive scale that way. And so tools that would help us do that would be fantastic. We do have a great partnership with Cargo, who we met through the Brand Innovators community, and they are helping us do that, but more would be fantastic.
Great. Well, I just want to thank Linda again so much for being so generous with your thoughts, and this has been a fantastic session. So thanks to all of you for the great questions as well. And Linda, thank you so much.
Thank you. Happy holidays, everyone.